Hey, good morning and good evening. One moment. So let's get started in another 1 minute, 1 or 2 minutes max. So meantime, I'll share the screen. So hope you are able to see the screen now. I think you should be able to see the notepad as of now. So just wait for 1 more minute. Anyone from outside US? Just asking because, sorry, outside India. Just asking because I want to be available for any queries or anything like that, during that time zone as well. So just wanted to check if anyone is currently joining outside of India or
Yeah, I am in US. It is perfect time, like
is,
8:30 p.m. Yeah.
is it CST, Central Time Zone?
Yes,
Okay,
CST. Yeah.
okay, got it. So you should be, you can ping for any queries from 5 p.m. Sorry, 4 p.m. CST to 8 p.m. CST, anywhere between 4 p.m. CST to 8 p.m. CST.
Okay. Great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Uh, okay. So without any further delay, let's get started. So yesterday we had a demo session, right? So in the demo session, we discussed about what is performance testing and LoadRunner architecture, and we also discussed on how to record a simple flow. We just recorded and replayed a script like 3-4 steps, and then we have gone through the course content, and then we had discussed about few queries here and there. Uh, in today's session, we will discuss about different types of performance testing. So if you are assigned to work on any project, you will be responsible to perform different types of performance testing based on the requirement. So there are different types. For example, we have a load test, we have stress test, we have endurance test, we have a scalability test, we have a volume test, we have a failover test, like that. So it doesn't mean that you need to execute or perform all types of tests in all the projects. It's just that what the client needs and what is the existing type of test that they are following, or what exactly is needed for the application. Okay, if they ask us, we should be able to provide an input on what kind of test is required for their applications. Okay, so uh, uh, I can share these slides as well. But for now, I just want to write down everything in Notepad so that we will be able to understand it in better way, and I can share these slides later on as well. So we do have these slides ready, but I just want to use the Notepad for today. Okay, so according to the simple definition that we have learned yesterday, performance testing is all about checking the performance of an application by applying some load, right? Now, now, uh, Apart from this, one important point is what we need to remember is performance testing is generally measured using speed, stability, and scalability. So if you see the speed, it is all about how fast the application is responding to your request. For example, you click a link or you click a button, then how much time it is taking for the user to navigate from one page to another page. Okay, so how fast the application is responding, that is more important, and it is measured in terms of speed. Stability is nothing but if you are using the application for longer duration, then is the application stable enough? Is the application stable enough without any performance issues in the long run? Okay, so that is about stability. And scalability is nothing but the application's ability to handle more user volume without any performance degradation. Okay, so these three terms like speed, stability, and scalability is what we need to remember. So we will be discussing different types of performance testing right today. So I will be relating these three terms to those types of performance testing. So whenever you are assigned to work on any project and client doesn't have any idea about the performance testing and requests you to take a decision on what type of performance testing is required. So you always have to remember these three terms: speed, stability, and scalability. If you want your application to perform well in real scenarios, then your application should be able to handle the speed, stability, and scalability as well. So let's discuss the different types of performance testing and see how these terms can be related to those. The first one would be load test. Okay. Second one, stress test. Third is endurance test, or you can also call it as soak test, or you can also call it as duration test. The fourth one may be a scalability test. Fifth is, let's say, a volume test. Sixth is a failover test. Okay, these should be good enough. Um, like we can discuss couple of points on, let's say, spike testing as well. So in today's session, we will discuss 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. Sixth type of test we will discuss tomorrow, because to understand failover test, we need to understand few terms like what is a server, what is application server, what is a web server, what is a database server. Okay, so we will be discussing those important terms and terminologies tomorrow, the first thing, and then followed by failover test and how we will be executing a failover test, because we need to have a clear approach while doing a failover test, because we need some assistance from either dev team or the admin team. Okay, so we'll discuss that in detail tomorrow, but let's try to understand the other types of tests today. So first one is a load test. Okay, so if you want to analyze the performance of an application, the first test that we generally do, okay, on any sort of application is a load test. So what exactly is a load test? What exactly it is doing? What exactly we are going to achieve out of this? So load test will be done to find out uh, how the application is responding. Basically, it's all about checking the speed of the application. Okay, so checking the speed of the application by applying some expected load. What do you mean by expected load? Okay, what do you mean by expected load? Load is nothing but the number of users in this case. Okay, so we will discuss in detail and different dimensions later on. But as of now, let's Consider load is nothing but number of users. So when you want to check the speed of the application with some number of users, that is called a load test. So when you run a load test, your primary um, goal will be to find out how fast the application is responding, how fast a user is able to navigate from one page to another page. Okay, that will be your primary criteria. For how long you will run this test? We will run for 1 hour steady state. Okay, I'll tell you what is steady state later on, but just try to understand that with all the users up and running, okay, with all the users up and running, we will be executing this test for 1 hour. Okay, let's say there is an application for which you want to do a load test. Let's say the number of users are 200. So once all the 200 users are up and running, that means once all the 200 users are, you know, have logged in, launched and logged in, kind of thing, then how the application is behaving, we will verify by continuing to run for 1 hour. Okay, so 1 hour steady state. Okay, um, now since yesterday I have been saying that uh, it's all about how fast the application is responding, how much time it is taking for the user to navigate from one page to another page, etc. For example, there is a browser, right? So I click something on the browser. Let's say I click on this icon or I click on this button. So how much time it is taking to load the next page, right? That is important, right? So what do you think? How much time is generally acceptable? Okay, so whatever the application you use, you click a link or you click a button, how much time do you think is acceptable, uh, you know, generally for the clients, so that the client will be okay? So you click a link, how much time is generally acceptable so that the page will be loaded successfully? What do you think? You click
To
less
five
than?
Below 5
seconds.
seconds mostly.
Okay. So general industry standard is 2 seconds. Okay. So the max amount of time, okay, that it should take to load a page is generally 2 seconds. However, depending on the project complexity, depending on the client requirement, they will be okay for 3 or 5 seconds as well. Okay, so some applications, client will say, hey, my application needs to be fast, to be super fast, and every click that you make, so page should load within 2 seconds. Some other client will say, I'm okay with 3 seconds also. So some other client will say, because the project architecture and complexity is high, then I'm okay with 5 seconds. Okay, so like that, there will be some difference depending on project to project, but all in all, the general standard is 2 seconds. Okay, so what do you call that? So we as a performance tester, we uh, you know take it into consideration as response time. So whenever if someone is asking, I executed a performance test for login functionality. Okay, let's say I executed a performance test for login functionality. They might immediately ask you a question. What is the response time for that? What do you mean by response time? Response time is nothing but the amount of time taken for the request to go to server and get the response back from it. Okay, so we will discuss what is server and how the request will go and how we will get response and all those things tomorrow. But as of now, just understand that there is an important term called response time, okay, which we will discuss, or which we will use in our projects on day-to-day basis. This is a very common term, and I know, and very important, especially while conveying your observations to client. Okay, so you will say, hey, I have executed a load test for my application. All the response times, or you can say, I've executed a load test for the application today. Response times are good, and within the SLA. What do you mean by SLA? SLA is nothing but service level agreement. So some projects will have like SLA of 2 seconds, like I mentioned, right? Client will say, if you click any link, it should load in 2 seconds. That means client is saying any link that you click or any button that you click, the page should load in 2 seconds. That means SLA is 2 seconds. In some projects, 3 seconds. In some projects, like we discussed, 5 seconds. So when we convey something to client, we might have a statement something like this. We executed a load test today and response times were good and all the transactions response time are within the SLA. What do you mean by within the SLA? SLA is something that is set by the client as an expectation so that the dev team will design and develop the application according to the requirement. Okay. Now let's say um, there is a there is a login functionality. Okay, just an example. Login scenario that you are doing a performance testing and you got a response time of you executed the load test and you got a response time, you observed a response time of let's say 7 seconds for login and your SLA is 2 seconds. So what does it mean? Performance you know result, the response time is 7 seconds and SLA is 2 seconds. Is that okay for you? The
No,
client,
not this.
not okay, right? Because client has already set an SLA of 2 seconds and you executed a load test for login scenario and you got a response time of 7 seconds. So 7 seconds is like almost 5 seconds more than SLA, right? Which is not acceptable. So you will be working with the development team to fine tune or tune the code or SQL queries or whatever it is, just to make sure the response times are within the SLA. Okay, so you need, as a performance tester, we need to work with the dev team to get it fixed. So what are the important terms that we discussed? Load, that is nothing but number of users. Steady state is nothing but the amount of time that this test will run. Response time, we know how much time it is taking to for the request to go to server and get the response back, right? What is SLA? SLA is service level agreement. Generally, client will give this number. Client will say that for my application, all the transactions, whatever the user do, everything should load in 2 seconds, something like that. Then if you got a high response time like 7 seconds, that means there is some performance issue. Okay, so if you find a performance issue, let's say like above, we call it as bottleneck. See, you can call it as issue also, but generally the term that we use in performance testing space is bottleneck. Okay, they will ask you, uh, did you find any bottlenecks in today's load test? Something like that. So these are important terms. So generally these will be used, by the performance testers and the stakeholders as well. Okay, so I quickly we will uh, uh, you know uh, go through these important points again. So load test is the first major test that we will run. Okay, in every project, basically this is the first major type of test that we run, and it is all about checking the speed of the application by applying some load. And the primary goal is to find out if the response times are within the SLA or not. At the same time, we also verify for errors, failed transactions, okay, etc. It's simply not like just verifying the response times. We also see if there are any errors or issues, okay, during the performance test or load test. Okay, so when we are running a load test, there is every chance that you might get some unexpected errors as well in the server logs. So how do you verify and all that, those things we'll see later. But as part of this test, we also look for errors, failed transactions, like, in some infrastructure metrics like CPU and memory utilization, etc. Okay, we'll discuss all these things in detail later on. So any questions still here? Did you understand what is load test all about? Okay, these things we'll do practically also, but before going there, we need to understand these important terms. Like these things we generally use in our course and in your projects every day. That's the reason we are discussing these important terms today. Okay, now uh, and one more thing, if this test itself is a failure, okay, let's say you ran a load test. I mentioned that this is the first major type of test that we run, and let's say if this is a failure, then there is no point in running other types of tests like stress test or endurance test like that, because this first major type of test itself is a failure. Then why do you want to stress more? Why do you want to run for longer duration? The basic test itself is failing, the important test itself is failing. So what is the criteria for a performance tester to decide whether it is a pass or fail? Okay, I will explain you those points later on, but as every test, okay, the result will be either pass or fail or partial success. So as a performance tester, we need to derive and we need to conclude whether a particular test is a pass or a fail or a partial success. Okay, so let's go to the second type of test that we generally run, that is stress test. The name itself is self-explanatory. So stress is, is not, stress test is nothing but stressing the application beyond the load test limit. So in simple words, I mean, I'm not, see, anywhere I'm not using any textbook definitions or anything like that. So we are trying to understand these things in simple words. So in future, if required, we will see the textbook definitions as well, but I'm sure you don't need that for interviews or for working in projects. You don't need any textbook definitions for sure. So stress test is not nothing but testing the application beyond the, let's say, load test volume. Okay, so testing the application beyond the load test volume. So for example, if load test was executed with 500 users, then stress test is done by using anything beyond 500. So like you can run with 600, 800, 900, 1000 users, 200 users like that. You can stress the application. Okay. And you can stress to an extent where the application breaks or where you find the breaking point. This is very important point, guys. Okay. See, you can stress the application. To how much extent you want to stress, that is one point. And sometimes you have to stress the application until it breaks. Sometimes client will come and say, hey, can you do a kind of test which will tell me where my application is breaking? Then you have to keep on stressing the application to an extent where you see some failures or application server or some crash. Okay, so I'll tell you one simple example. So let's say there is a restaurant. I know, as usual in any restaurant there will be the owner, okay, and there will be some helper who will be taking the food orders and delivering the food on the table. So let's say there is a restaurant and there are 5 tables in that restaurant, and there is one helper who takes orders from the customers and deliver the food accordingly on the table. Now, there was a demand and owner decided to increase the number of tables from 5 to 7. That's fine. This helper who was managing 5 tables is now managing 7 tables. Okay. Um, and then slowly, maybe the taste was too good that the customers are, coming in. So the demand increased. Though now the number of tables increased from 7 to 9. Okay, the owner of the restaurant decided to increase the number of tables from 7 to 9, and the helper is now managing 9 tables, taking the order and delivering the food. However, the amount of time taken by the helper to deliver the food at every table increased drastically because the number of tables increased, right? When the number of tables increased, the amount of time will also increase for that helper to manage, right? So let's say at 5 or 7 tables, let's say the helper is taking like 20 minutes to, to deliver the food. Now with 9 tables, the helper is taking, let's say, 35 minutes. There is some performance degradation, right? The performance dropped, right? So earlier the helper was managing like in 20 minutes all these 5 7 tables the helper was managing. Now the helper is taking 35 minutes, the performance dropped. Okay, now again there is a demand, so owner decided to increase the number of tables from 9 to 11. Then the helper said, no, no, it's done. I cannot manage all 11 tables. I cannot do it. That's it. I'm resigning. I'm leaving for the day. Bye bye. So what exactly we are trying to understand here? The max the helper could manage is only 9 tables, and that too with some performance issue. Beyond 9, the helper couldn't manage, and it's the system, the restaurant delivery system broke. So in case of software also, any application, there will be some limit based on the application's server's configuration and capacity. The application will be able to handle some amount of load. It could be 500 users, it could be 800 users, it could be 1500 users. But at some point there will be a max limit. And if that exceeds, the application will break. Okay, that means it will stop responding. Okay, so many users are there, it will stop responding, page will not load, pages will load forever. All these kind of issues will come up. So in stress test, there will be some situation where where we need to find the breaking point as well. Okay, so this test can also be run for 1 hour or more depending on the requirement. There is no specific criteria. Here also we verify the response times and compare with SLA, and of course compare with SLA. Okay, same thing we do, and we also verify the errors, and all these stuff. Okay, so what is different from load test? In this test we are stressing the application to some extent, where we can also find the breaking point. Any questions in this type of test? Did you guys understand what exactly is this all about?
Yeah, I have a question, Krishna. Like, for example, we are doing
uh,
load test with 100 users.
Sorry, I'm sorry, your voice is not clearly audible. So can you try to speak a bit louder? We'll see again.
Yeah, am I audible now?
Mm, yeah, to some extent, but I'll give a try. Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'm saying that when, for example, here we are doing load test with, for example, 100 users. So, like, so do we need to ask the client, like, what is the amount of users that we are going to do for stress test, or we should, like, stress it till the point we are observing errors and we are observing performance issues? Like, how do we decide? Like, is it like we put on client, or like we need to understand that we need to stress it beyond like anything till the application breaks?
Yeah, I mean it's I mean for everyone who was who was not able to hear the question properly, the question was something like this. So the question is, uh, who will decide, and how we will be able to decide whether we need to run the stress test until it breaks, or run the stress test with some X number of users. So it again depends from project to project. In some projects, client will let us know, like to run. a stress test to find the breaking point or not, or client will have some number. Okay, the client will have some number like the max number of users we might get in production might be like 1,000 or something like that. So can you test till 1,000 users like that? So most of the times we try to stress it and break it. Okay, most of the times we try to stress it and break it because we want to know what is the breaking point so that we will tell the client, hey, your application with this capacity, with this server configurations, will be able to manage these number of users only. So client will have a clear picture on what is the max number of users that application is going to support.
Okay, like
Okay.
depending on future business requirements or something.
That is again, yeah, that can also be considered. But if the future requirements are to be considered, then they will incline more towards scalability test. But is I mean, you don't need to do both these types of tests at a time. So if you do a stress test, you don't need to focus on scalability test. If you do a scalability test, you don't need to focus on stress test. So I'll tell you what's the slight difference in some time. But as of now, just remember, y- general cases, we try to stress the application until it breaks.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
So
So
how will
yeah,
you
go ahead.
know what is the breaking point? Like there
Uh,
will be any errors or response
uh,
times more.
correct. Correct.
Yeah.
So what happens is when it breaks, you get to see a lot of errors during the test itself. Like you get to see errors like 500, 502. 500 is like internal server error, and 502 is like bad gateway. You might also see a 504 bad gateway timeout. Like there are different types of errors that we generally see when the application is down. Okay, so it slowly starts with high response times and end up in all the errors and a possible restart also. Okay, so we will discuss those things
Yeah.
in detail, but
Okay.
but it will generally, the observation will start with high response times. Let's say you started a stress test with, let's say, some number of users, and you are getting good response times like 3 seconds, 2 seconds, like that. But when you keep on increasing the users, the response times also increased and it reached up to 10 seconds, 15 seconds, like that. And then there will be some point where it will high response times will turn into pages loading very very slow, and in fact pages loading forever, and all, and like getting all the server side errors. So we will see what are those errors, what kind of errors we have, what are the different server side errors we have, all those things we'll see in our upcoming sessions. This
Yeah.
is about
Okay.
the stress test. If you don't have any
What about
yeah, go ahead.
yeah? So what about if the CPU and memory utilization takes 100% for some 500 users? Will that also be called as a breaking point?
Uh, yes. See, what happens is, let's take for today's understanding, because we did not discuss anything in detail. I'll tell you one
Mm.
small example. So when you are running a stress test, let's say because the number of users are more, let's say the memory utilization reached to 100%. Okay, so like those who are not aware of what is memory, what is CPU utilization, or what is memory related to the performance testing, just wait till tomorrow so that we'll get more clarity. But this is for them who knows what is memory utilization, and who asked the question. So uh, when the users are increasing, okay, there is every chance that the memory consumption might also increase, and it might reach to 100%. There is a chance for some xyz reason. There are multiple reasons why memory will reach 100%. 100%, we'll discuss that later, but let's say there is a chance. Now when it reaches 100%, okay, obviously the server will not respond, and most probably it will auto restart with the with the servers. placed in the cloud locations like AWS or Azure or wherever it is, they have a feature to auto restart whenever these kind of issues occur. Okay, so if the memory utilization reaches 100%, those server instances will auto restart, and that is also kind of an indication that the server, the application is not able to manage these number of users, and we might need to increase the capacity of the application. Okay, there are other factors also, but yeah, it is also one of the point. Like whatever you asked, it is also considered as one of the point.
Okay.
Okay, just 1 second. Okay, the third type of test, a very, very important type of test, generally in most of the applications, is an endurance test, or it is also called as soak test. It is also called as duration. Different projects call it with different names, but the meaning is same. So this type of test is all about checking the stability of the application. Do you remember the three terms that we discussed? Speed, stability. Speed, I already mapped it to load test. Stability, I'm mapping it to endurance test. So its endurance test is all about checking the stability of the application. Okay, by running the test for longer duration, like 3 hours, 5 hours, 8 hours, 1 day, etc. Okay, now why should we run a test for longer duration like 3 hours, 5 hours, 8 hours like this? Because uh, we should also check for stability of the application. What do you mean by stability? So let's say you're running the test for 5 hours. In the first 1 hour, whatever the response times you are getting, like 2 seconds or 3 seconds, or in the first 1 hour, how the application is responding, it should behave same for the remaining duration of the test. Okay, like in the first 1 hour, response times are very good. In the second 1 hour, response times increased little bit. In the third hour, response times increased drastically. No, it should not behave like that. When you're running a test for longer duration, the response time should be more or less same for the entire duration. If the response times are varying and there is a huge difference in the response times in the first 1 hour, in the second 1 hour, in the third 1 hour like that, that means there is some issue that we need to look into. Okay, and most of the cases there is one issue called memory leakage. Okay, there is one performance bottleneck or issue called memory leakage. This is the most uh, common issue that is observed in these types of tests. So why a memory leak will happen? What is a memory leak? Okay, we will discuss that in detail in the next upcoming sessions. But as of now, just understand that there is something called memory leakage, which can happen in these types of tests. There is a high chance that this issue can occur. And because of this, memory utilization can reach to 100%, and and those instances can auto restart or can be down, something like that. So we will mainly look into any memory leakage kind of issues. We will also verify the response times and compare it with SLAs. At the same time, we also look for errors, failed transactions, CPU and memory utilization, etc. So these things will take into consideration when you're running the endurance test for longer duration. Okay. Now, how much time we need to run? 3 or 5 or 8 or 1 day? It all depends on your project. If they are already following some time duration, you continue to follow. Else, you see how many load generators are available for you to run for the longer duration. See, basically what happens is, if you are working for a big organization and they have a dedicated load generator machines for your project, that means your project and your team only will be using those machines and nobody else will use. In that case, you have machines available with you to run for longer duration. Then you can run 5 hours, 8 hours, it's up to you. But in some cases, in some mid-size projects or low budget projects, there will be minimal load generator machines available, and that too shared. That means 2-3 teams will share those load generator machines, okay, which you use for your load tests. So in that case, because other teams should also work, other teams should also test, there is a chance that there will be a conflict. So you reduce the time duration to 3 to 5 hours. Otherwise, 5 to 8 hours endurance test is a good test. Okay. Now, in this case, there is one more point that we need to discuss. How many users we need to use for endurance test? In some projects, in some projects, they use 100% load as okay, or 100% volume as load test. For example, in some projects, if load test is run for with 500 users, okay, let me write that point also. For example, 500 users. So if load test is run with 500 users, endurance test will also be run with 500 users. Okay. In some other projects, they will take only 75% of the volume. That means if load test is run with 500 users, endurance test will be run with 75%, that is 350 users. Now, which option you need to choose? If your project is already following either of these, you continue to follow the same. If you have to take a decision, go with 100% volume, no worries. Okay, there is nothing wrong in testing 100% volume if you ask me, because I have been doing the same thing. But I have seen there are some projects they go with 75% volume because they think that when you run the test with longer duration, there is a chance that users might go up and down, right? So on an average, they take like 75% of the volume. Okay, so either you go with 75 or 100, that is fine. It's up to you. So any questions in this type of test? Did you understand what you need to do exactly for this type of test? Whatever the scenarios that you are developing, those scenarios you need to run for longer duration, like 3 hours, 5 hours, 8 hours, or etc. So please make note of important points that I mentioned. So how many hours test that we need to run depends on project project availability with respect to number of machines and all that stuff. So keep those points in mind as well. Okay. Any questions?
Yes, it's not clear how it's look like in real life. So the same test that runs for 5 seconds, for example, will be run repeatedly 5 hours.
Um, okay. So let's say there is a login functionality. Okay. So because we haven't started practicals, it will be little um, uh, you know uh, complicated to assume things, but I hope these points will make your doubts clear. So let's say you are doing a performance test for login functionality of your application. So your client said, check how this login functionality is working when you run the test for longer duration. That means your application should keep on running, right? In real time, it should not go down. So application will be there, always available for the users. So when the application is running continuously, okay, how it is behaving. So let's say for login functionality, you are running a 3 hours load test, 3 hours endurance test, let's say. Now in the first hour, okay, on an average, you got 2 to 3 seconds response time on an average. Okay, first 1 hour. Okay, in the second 1 hour, the expectation is you should get the same response times or similar response times. If you see a response times increasing, like we are getting like 4 to 5 seconds now. Why? Because you are doing the same login, you're doing the same login, same users. Why there should be an increase in the response time? Why a performance is degraded here in this hour? There is something wrong, with the application, that the performance has degraded in the second 1 hour. So probably a third hour is also expected to get the same response times, but let's say we are getting like 5 to 6 seconds response times you are getting, which is again uh, you know not good, right? So your expectation is, if you are running a 3 hours test, the performance should be same throughout the test. First 1 hour, second 1 hour, third 1 hour, every time, any time that you run, the performance, the response time should be similar. It can deviate, 1 second here and there, but it should not have a major deviation. Okay. So we will discuss that in detail as well in our upcoming sessions, but hope you got some clarity on what exactly we are trying to find out in the endurance test. So our application performance should be stable in the long run. That is what we want to check. Okay. So hope everyone are clear with this. So it's
Yes.
not complex to understand. It's easy only. I mean, at least to my knowledge, even for a new learner, I think I'm sure these terms and types of performance testing should be easy to understand and make some points out of it. However, I'll show you these type of scenarios, how we run a load test. In our practical sessions, we will also run a load test for 1 hour. Okay, so we will run the test for 1 hour, and we will see what are the issues that we generally observe. Okay, so all the points that I mentioned over here, we will take a look at it. Okay, similarly, I'll also tell you how to configure and how to run stress test, endurance test, other types of tests as well. Fourth one is a scalability test. Okay, this is in sync with stress test. That means generally projects which are running stress test, they don't focus on scalability, and projects which are focusing on scalability, they don't need to focus on stress test, because more or the less, the main motto is to increase the users or increase the volume. Okay, so I'll tell you when they call it as scalability test. So so generally client will ask us to run the load test with 500 users, let's say. Okay, now client will also mention one point, that in the next 6 months or in the next 1 year, the number of users might increase from 500 to 1000. The client is assuming something for the future. Okay, so client is assuming something for the future, that the number of users might increase by 100%, or the number of users will be doubled. So keeping that in mind, we will run the scalability test, okay, with that future anticipated volume. So if client is saying that the number of users will increase up to 1000 users, so now itself we will run a test with 1000 users and provide your observations and concerns. I'll tell you one thing. I mean, there are other examples also, but a very good example is, we all know in the year 2020 there was a pandemic, right? There was a pandemic in the month of March, somewhere around March or April. So I was supporting for one of the banking project during that time. We were a team of around 20 performance testers. You imagine the amount of, you imagine how big the project is. Okay, that means we as a group of 20 performance testers supporting multiple applications. Like we were almost supporting like close to 100 applications. Okay, so during it was a banking application, by the way. So during that pandemic, we all worked from home. We do remember that we all started working from home. Similarly, all the banking customers also started using online applications rather than going to the bank directly, right? So one day, in the month of April, if I remember correctly, client set up a meeting with all the performance testers and mentioned that they got some information like because of the pandemic, people are not interested to go to bank directly. Rather, they choose to you know, use online services. Okay, considering that point, the banking firm assumed that the number of users will be increased up to 400%. That means the users accessing their online applications, different online applications, will increase up to 400%. What do you mean by that? Currently, if an application is you know, supporting 500 users, right? So the assumption is the users might go up to 400%. What is 400% of 500? It can go up to 2000 users, correct? So uh, so client mentioned this point clearly. So users might go up to 400% in the next 3 months. That's the same statement he used. Okay, so the users might go up to 400% in the next 3 months is what they stated. Now, what we have to do as a performance tester? What we have to do as a performance tester? For example,
ensure scalability.
our application was already tested, okay, with 500 users. Okay, this was already tested and it is good. Okay, we also tested endurance test also. It is also good, but the sudden requirement anticipated that in the next 3 months users might go up to 400%. No, that means 100% is nothing but 500 users here. Okay, then what should we do now? Okay, now client mentioned that, can you guys, for all the applications, can you guys check whether our applications will be able to withstand the 400% load or not? Am I clear? The client mentioned this statement again. Can you all check whether our applications will be able to withstand 400% of load? Okay. So what we have to do in this case? Can anyone tell what we have to do in this case? As a performance tester, what we have to do in this case?
We need to increase the number of
Increase
users.
the users.
So what is the next? So we already ran this test. Then what is the next test we have to do? We already ran a test with 500 users. Okay. Now what is the next test we have to do?
Increase
We
the
have to
users.
increase it somehow, like +1 all the time, for example.
Sorry, I think there was some voice overlap. Can you repeat the question again? Yeah, go ahead. No problem. Any one of you here.
I think the same load test will do, but we'll multiply the users by 4, like 2000.
Okay. So now you said that now we are going to run a 400% load, that is with 2000 users. Correct? This is what you are saying. Now this approach
Yes.
is incorrect. So now when you directly run this type of test here, okay, if it is a fail, if it is a pass, that's fine, well and good. If it is a fail, then your client will immediately ask you, then will it be able to withstand at least 1000 or at least 1500 users? Then you don't have answer for that.
Okay, so
Okay,
we'll gradually increase.
that's the reason you have to, if this test is a successful test, immediately maybe the next day or later in the day, you need to run a test with 1000 users, and then maybe if this is also successful, you need to run a test with 1500 users. If this is also successful, then you need to run with this number of users. So at that particular point of time, out of around close to 100 applications, 60 to 70 applications, okay, were not able to handle this much load also. They were managing this much load, but they were not able to manage this much load. Out of 90 to 100 applications, only 30 to 40 applications were able to manage 2000 users. The remaining applications, like 60 to 70 applications, they were not able to handle 1500 users. Then what we have to do as a performance testers? Okay, immediately we need to discuss with the client and the management, and the immediate solution they generally provide is to
Infra.
upscale the infrastructure. That means if you have if the application is using a 16 GB memory, they will double it to 32 GB memory. If they are using uh, 2 cores of CPU, they will increase to 4 cores or 8 cores of CPU. That means there is the immediate solution will be to scale up. I mean, a kind of scale up or scale out. We will discuss what is the difference in tomorrow in detail, but they will either increase the number of servers, or they will increase the server capacity by increasing the memory and CPU. Okay. So that is possible. So all in all, a scalability test will be done considering the future growth. Okay. So the client will come to you and say, hey, in the next 3 months, the users might grow up to 400%. Like, then you need to plan accordingly and test it. Okay. But when you test these kind of scenarios, generally we ignore this because both of them kind of, you know, derive a similar output, but it all depends on what the client is using, the terms and terminology. If the client is stressing on the term stress, you can you can make sure that you are covering up both the points in the discussion. If the client is using the terms like scalability and all, you can again inform the client about, this is what we can do, and at the same time this is also something that we can do. So it's up to client what they want, and they will tell us what we need to do and we can do it. Okay, it's not like we will ignore this, we will ignore that. When we are discussing with client, we will give all the options to client, and client will decide what they want from us. Okay, so when do we interact with client? I will tell you tomorrow. What all the questions we need to ask to client, we will discuss in our upcoming sessions, maybe day after tomorrow. I will tell you in detail what are the different questions that we need to ask to client before you start working on any project. It's not like you are assigned to some project and start working immediately, you start doing the scripting part, execution. No, you need to gather all the information. Okay, very, very important. Without gathering the information, you cannot start working on anything. Okay, so that's the first step that we need to do, and we will discuss that in detail in our next day after tomorrow session. um, Volume test is same as load test. Okay, volume test is same as load test. Now I'm saying volume test is same as load test, then why it is called volume test? Volume test is primarily focusing on the database volume. Okay, so for example, I'll tell you, uh, this is similar to load test, except that we intentionally insert huge amount of data in the database. Okay, in the database, and then run a test with same users as load test. So what exactly this means? So you have already run a load test with 500 users. Good. But the thing is, when you run the load test with 500 users, let's say the amount of data that you have in the database is 1 lakh records. Okay. Now I want to know, as a performance tester, if there is a huge amount of data in the database, how the application is behaving. See, take a generic example. We all use mobile phones. When the phone is brand new, okay, you click you go on a road trip, you click like 500,000 pictures, and when you come back home, you open pictures, the pictures will load very fast. You just scroll, just pictures will keep on loading fast, super fast. But what if you have been using the phone for the past 2 to 3 years, and you have more than 100K or 200K pictures in that? Will those pictures load quickly or slowly? Slowly, right? Why they might load slowly? Because there is a huge data in your phone which is causing the slowness. Similarly, in our software application, we want to make sure that if if our database data keeps on increasing drastically, then it should not have any impact on the performance. Okay, now I'll tell you, there is one application. Okay, so let's say okay, let's say there is one application. Now uh, when the application is new, there are 100 user IDs and passwords in the database. And when I log in here, it is easy for the code, to check those 100 username and passwords. If it matches, it should log in successfully. Now, what if database contains 1 lakh username and passwords? When I enter username and password, will it take more time to validate or not? So when you have a huge amount of data in the database, how your application is responding, that is where volume test is coming into picture. So in the volume test, we intentionally work with the DBA. Okay, we work with DBA. DBA stands for database administrator or dev team, to insert huge data in the DB. Okay, our focus will be to check if any SQL queries. Okay, we all know database can be accessed by using SQL queries, stored procedures, etc. Okay, are running slow. So when there's a huge amount of data, there is a direct impact on the amount of time taken to fetch the data from the database, right? So we are verifying that here. Any questions? And one thing is, we don't do this type of test in every project. If you ask me, sir, when did you do this test? Unfortunately, I did that in the, I think, 6 months ago for one of the project, and before that I did it in 2019, if I remember correctly. So I mean, I did some performance testing for various projects, but the thing is, those clients, they did not want volume test. The volume test was not in scope. The the project which I supported like 6 to 7 months ago, uh, in that project, I got, we had to do this volume test. Okay, so any questions? So
Yeah,
this,
for this
yeah, go ahead.
volume test, like for this volume test, like will we insert the data in the database just before the test or during the test? Like, how does it work?
Before the test.
Okay.
Before the test only, your database should have a huge amount of data. Then when we run the test, our request will go to the application, and application will may access database to fetch some data. So because there is a huge amount of data in the database, it might take some time, right?
Okay. Okay.
So
Yeah.
let me use some Epic Pen to show. Just be with me for next 3 to 5 minutes. So we'll close the session in 5 minutes. Um, so just want to make this clear. Okay, so let's say this is the UI from where you click a link or click a button or enter something. Let's say this is a database. Okay, now when you click a link and the request will go to the database, to the application, and in turn it will go to database, right? So if this database contains huge amount of data, then it will take time to it will take time to get the data back, right? One second.
Retrieve.
Right? So that's how it is. So you click a link and it will go to database. The request will go to database and the response should come back. So if you have only, let's say, 100 records here, generally let's say it takes only 1 second to get the data back. Let's say if you have 100,000 records, then let's say it is taking 5 seconds. So, or it is taking 10 seconds. So we will focus on checking how much time it is taking if you have huge amount of data in your database, right? So this test we generally don't do every time. Only if client is insisting us to verify, then only we will do. Um, so most of the warehouse projects, we do this type of testing. I mean, I'm just giving an example. Okay, so the warehousing systems, data warehouse management systems will be there, right? So in those kind of projects, we do this type of testing. Okay.
Okay.
Uh, okay. Next, sixth test is failover test. We will discuss this tomorrow because I want to explain few more concepts before we discuss this. Spike testing is something like uh, we want to analyze how the application is responding when there is a sudden spike. Okay, what do you mean by sudden spike? When there is a sudden increase in the user load, how the application is responding. For example, we are suddenly adding 100 users. Okay, suddenly we are increasing 100 users and see how the application is responding, and suddenly dropping those 100 users, again suddenly increasing 200 users, suddenly dropping those. So how our application is managing the sudden spike. Okay, when there are when there are users accessing your application suddenly, how it is behaving. So to check that, we run spike test, but it's very rare. It's a simple type of test that we can run, we can configure. I will show you how we can configure this type of test as well. But it's all about how the application is behaving when there's a sudden surge. Okay, when there's a sudden surge or spike in the number of users. Okay, and there's a sudden drop in the number of users, right? So we will continue tomorrow with the failover testing, and I will share these notes and slides as well, soon. So you can also use these notes as a running notes, and whenever you want to go through, you can just go through quickly all these types of tests so that you can you can have so many points in mind. Okay, any questions?
No.
Okay, so tomorrow we will discuss what is a server, what is a web server, what is application server, what is a database server, what is a protocol, and how we do how we do the failover testing, why failover testing is famous in the recent past. So we will discuss that in detail tomorrow. Okay, so let me stop recording here. Okay, so